Hello everyone and welcome to Werven's World and welcome to my top 5 roguelikes suitable for new players in the genre. Roguelikes are notoriously difficult but also very often quite opaque. So I thought I would make a list with 5 videos with games that I think that are easy to get into so you can kind of get a taste of what roguelike games have to offer, and then maybe if you like them you can then make the step up to the more complicated ones. The first game on the list is a game called Dungeons of Dredmor. This was the flagship game of a studio called Gaslamp Games, which unfortunately does not exist anymore. Judging it by the graphics, it might not really look like it, but I would call this game just as much a roguelike as all the other entries in this game, and the nice part about it is that it's surprisingly easy to learn but very hard to master. It actually has a lot of hidden depth that's a lot of fun to explore. The game features a huge amount of skill trees, which is quite cool, and you can choose 7 of these skill trees at the beginning of the game, and each time you level up you can choose a skill within each of these skill trees, and there is a lot of variety here. For example, you can make a dual-wielding Viking magic-using vampire that happens to be a vegan, or what about a communist paranormal investigator who dabbles in alchemy and demonology, and who likes tourism but unfortunately has the curse of the Werediggle, which allows her to transform into said Werediggle. The game features an elaborate crafting system as well as several difficulty levels, so if you first want to explore the game a bit before going full roguelike, you can just turn off permadeath mode, which is quite nice. It also has a function called no time to grind, which I like a lot because it greatly reduces the size of each level, and it compensates for this by giving more experience per monster, so you still level up an equal amount per level in the dungeon. However, this mode is still a little bit harder because you don't actually find as many items because there's less monsters to find and less item rooms that you can come across and stuff like that. So you will have a little bit of a harder time than normally. Onto the pros and cons of this game. It's easy to learn yet hard to master, which is really nice for a roguelike for new people because, well, you can already start playing without first having read a lot about it, like what are the tactics, how do you actually play it. So you can already start playing, but you can learn throughout the game about what works and what doesn't, and that makes it a lot of fun. It has a decent interface that works quite okay. It's not perfect. I wish they hadn't given the stats such weird names because you always kind of need to figure out what is what. But you can mouse over with your cursor and you can read about what different things do. There's lots of freedom in building your character, which is very nice. And it has a very funny tone. There's a lot of jokes in the game, which I actually found funny, so that's nice. Regarding the cons, it has a bit of a weird mix between keyboard and mouse controls, and I would prefer it if I would have a little bit more options here. For example, I cannot just pick up items without using my mouse unless I use the auto loot option, which I don't necessarily like. So I would just have preferred, for example, if I press G that I get the item like in other roguelikes, but that's not possible. The graphics can be a bit of a turn-off. I know they were for me. Now I liked them, but when I saw trailers I really didn't. So yeah. That's up to your own personal preference. And the inventory management can be absolutely terrible. So you are going to pick up a lot of stuff. And that's what actually the auto loot option is nice for. But if you, for example, have a tinkering and crafting character, you want to pick up all these raw materials in order to get all the ingredients for the things that you need to craft. But then your inventory is going to be completely bloated and you're going to hear a lot of times that
your inventory is full.
So that has been a little bit alleviated with the Wizardlands, where you can go into this special pocket dimension and you can just leave stuff there. But it's really not that great. I would vastly prefer it if the inventory was like 5 times as big or something. Of course, it also gives some kind of trade-offs in the game. But they're not that much trade-offs in a way, because you can always walk back and pick them up again. But it's just a little bit tedious. A full run can easily take many hours, like 10 to 20 hours, but of course with no time to grind this cuts it down to a couple of hours, but it's still definitely not a short game. Dungeons of Dredmor is available from Steam. Next up is a game called Drakefire Chasm by a Finn who goes by the name of Tanthea. This is what you call a coffee break roguelike, so that means that it's generally playable in about 30 minutes. And the premise is that you are a dragon. So at the beginning of the game you choose what kind of dragon you are, and then you start off as a very small one, but you'll grow bigger and stronger by eating your opponents. Each level features a variety of enemies you have to kill, and you can eat these enemies in order to heal up. However, eating has another effect which is quite cool, so meat can be either strong, tough or inspiring, and depending on which meat you ate the most of in a level, your strength, stamina or will is increased. Furthermore, in between each level you can increase a skill, so you can build the character in any way you want. Do you want to go for a magic build or a tanking toughness build or for a strength build? That's completely up to you, or you can also mix skills however you want. The game features ASCII graphics and very easy to learn gameplay, so it only has a couple of buttons that you have to know, and you'll definitely get the hang of it very quickly once you start playing. However, the game can still be very challenging, which is exactly what I'm looking for in these types of games, and that's also what makes me come back to this game every so often. The very nice thing is also that you have a variety of dragons, so you have a black dragon, white dragon, blue and red, so they all offer a little bit of variety in gameplay, which makes it that much more fun to play often. For the pros, I would say it has a very interesting and novel concept for gameplay. So you are a dragon that increases its skills by eating others, which is pretty cool. The level design is also quite fun, so every level has a different color palette, and it's not just boring rectangular rooms, but also like vast caverns and some nice rounded areas and stuff. So it's definitely fun to look at in a way. The game is very short, but it doesn't retract from the depth of gameplay. It's still very satisfying to play, so I really do enjoy this as a coffee break roguelike. So if I have 30 minutes or something, then this is very nice to play. Also, it's free, so you can just try it, and I put the download link in the description. I would say there's one con to the game, but it might not necessarily be a problem for you. So I have a 3440 x 1440 screen, so ultra wide screen, but I tend to record in 1920 x 1080 because that's a screen size most people have. However, this game just opens in a super tiny window, and I have that or full screen, but I can't resize it in any way, even not with third-party software such as Sizer, which I normally use to increase or decrease the size of a window. I still can't use that for this game. So graphics wise, there's basically no options to stretch it, but that is probably not really a problem for most people. Then there is the Golden Krone Hotel. This game took me by surprise when it was released last year, because at first I wasn't really sure about it, but it very quickly grew on me. The simplicity of its controls, combined with actually having a very nice depth to its gameplay, is its greatest strength. It also has a great mechanic in that you sometimes transform from a human into a vampire, which changes not only your stats and skills, but it also changes your enemy. See, the hotel is littered with both humans, vampires and monsters, and if you're a human you can kill vampires and monsters, but if you're a vampire you can kill humans and monsters. Furthermore, as a vampire you can trade with some fellow vampires unless you killed that trader when you were human. I really love this mechanic. Furthermore, light plays a very big role in the game, where you can break windows to have light shine on vampires in order to kill them, or yourself if you're a vampire. And you have to be careful with this, because the more windows are broken, the more light is there, and if you suddenly transform into a vampire, you might be in trouble. There's also some mechanic where basically the game, the sun comes up in the east, so at first light will come from the right side of the screen, then it will go to the south, so it comes from the south, and then it will go to the west, and the light comes from the left windows, and then there will be a moon phase. The game features a variety of enemies with different behaviors, which are quite interesting, as well as very nice locales and bosses. The loot system is super basic though, so it's basically just incrementally better swords and armor. At first you find a sword +1, then you find a sword +2, and then a sword +6 or whatever. But that doesn't really matter so much. It keeps the game really streamlined, and the variety is found in which stats you level whenever you level up, as well as which skills you decide to take when finding a skill book. These skills can make you range from a skilled melee fighter to a wizard who burns everything around him, and when you pick up potions you don't immediately know what they do, so you will actually have to test them. However, it's not pure randomness, so the game actually gives you some information. It basically gives you 3 options, like hey, it can be any of these 3, and often you can kind of guess which one it is based on the rarity. For example, here in this video clip I'm hungry and I decide to go for the potion of which I have the most of, and it indeed turns out to be an ale, because ale is not very rare. For pros, I would say the game is very easy to learn, but not easy to master. It's definitely not the hardest game to master, but it will still provide you with a very good challenge, and you will die often if you're not careful. The game also has a great original setting. You're all these people in this hotel and you're going up to this vampire, and there's a little bit of story in it as well. So it's just very nice package altogether. It also has a very smooth controls. There's not a lot of buttons that you need to know, and everything works exactly the way you think it would work. I honestly have a very hard time coming up with any cons, as it fills its niche so well. Like, it's a very light, short but satisfying roguelike that still offers enough depth to be interesting. I don't always feel like playing this roguelike, because sometimes I want something much longer and crunchier, but when I do feel like a very light roguelike, this game is basically as good as it gets. The game can be found on Steam, and I guess most of my games take me like between 1 and 2 hours. If you play on easy and have a good pacing, then sometimes you can finish them much quicker, especially if you die early. So it can definitely be considered as a coffee break roguelike, but sometimes they will last a bit longer than a coffee break would. Then there is Doom the Roguelike, or DRL for short. This is a game that just oozes character. It's really a first-person shooter in roguelike form. However, it's not just a 2D version of Doom, because in this game you can level up and choose different passives to help you on your way. Furthermore, you can find a lot of mod packs which not only enhance your equipment, but if you use them in certain combinations, you can change your equipment altogether. For example, if you use a power mod pack and a technical mod pack on a combat shotgun, you get a tactical shotgun, which does not need reloading, and this saves you 1 turn between each shot, so that's a really good upgrade. The game features several difficulty levels and provide plenty of challenge even on the lowest level, so the graphics are great, the tiles as well as the enemy sprites are really clean and easy to recognize. If you want to though, you can play on ascii mode, which you can run by running the doomrl console.bat file in the installation folder. However, I must say this ascii version is much less clear, or at least it needs much more learning than, for example, Drakefire Chasm does. I found that I very often did not exactly recognize when there was an enemy close by me, so for this game I definitely prefer the graphical version, although I must admit I haven't given it too much of a chance either. One of the really great things of this game is the music and the sounds. They're just spot on. Just listen to this clip here, and if you've ever played Doom 1 or 2, you'll just be taken right back to that game. Overall, the game is very easy to get into, but provides enough depth as well as challenge to remain interested. For pros, I would say it has very nice graphics. Every sprite and every tile is very clean. The music and sounds are great. However, I played the original Doom and Doom 2 when I was little, so this might be a bit of nostalgia speaking here. It also has a very solid gameplay. Everything is responsive, everything works exactly the way you would expect it to, and I really enjoy the settings as well, but of course that again might be nostalgia. For cons, I could only really think of one, and that's if you're offended by curse words, you'll probably want to skip on this game. If you look through the skill list, there's plenty of cursing going around, so if you're not into that stuff, then, well, you might want to skip this one. I wouldn't call this game a coffee break roguelike because it takes a bit longer than that, maybe a couple of hours, but it's not a very long one either. Also, it's available for free, so that's really nice, and I will put the download link in the description. Last up, there is Brogue, which is the game that is most closest to the original game called Rogue out of all these games in this list. It features fantastic level design, interesting monsters and fun gameplay. Furthermore, the aesthetics are just great for an ascii roguelike. The map is filled with huge caverns with bridges crossing them, as well as large lakes in the middle of the dungeon, so it just looks really great. Watch out for the lakes though, because, well, if you swim, not only can your equipment float away, but also there are some very, very dangerous eels around, and everyone who's ever played Brogue will know about them. One of my favorite mechanics in this game is that you can find creatures which you can actually free, and afterwards they will follow you and help you kill monsters, which is pretty cool. The game does not actually award you experience or levels up, which is very different from many other roguelikes. So instead you have to raise your strength through these potions of strength, which in turn allows you to wear and wield more advanced items. However, these items that you will want to wear can be cursed, and so you might want to identify them first, or you can just immediately wear them and over time you will reveal their properties to you. If they are cursed, you can later on uncurse them, but yeah, you can actually not remove them from your equipment slots before you do that. I also like how the game features some puzzles, so sometimes you think you cannot get somewhere, but there will always be a way. The level design is really good, so either you need to find a secret door, or you need to, for example, activate a pressure plate in order to open a door, and sometimes you need to think out of the box a little bit. So one of the greatest strength of this roguelike, in my opinion, is the really good user interface for an ASCII roguelike. So everything is written clearly, so you rarely need to explore or use any commands to see what does this tile do. And the very nice thing is that there are so many icons for every different item, but you don't need to learn them, because as long as they're in your vision, then on the top left of the screen there will be basically a summary of all the things you are seeing on the screen, including their icons basically, so you know what you're looking at. For pros, I think this game has one of the best aesthetics for an ASCII roguelike. It looks both nice as well as very clean, so all the information is immediately apparent, which is very important. These things make it so that the ASCII is very easy to interpret, even if you've never played games like this, maybe a little bit like Drakefire Chasm has as well, but Doom the Roguelike didn't have. Secondly, the game has actually a lot of depth to it. I'll said it before and I'll say it again, it's easy to learn and it's hard to master, which is exactly what we're looking for when talking about roguelikes for new players. It is entirely possible to beat this game without reading up on wikis about what you should do. Of course, you will die a lot, you will learn a lot, but that's kind of the purpose of roguelikes. For cons though, I would say my main gripe with the game is that maybe it's a bit soulless, if you can say that. So there's like not some great setting or anything, you're just this anonymous adventurer heading into the dungeons in order to retrieve an amulet at the bottom of said dungeon, which is very similar to Rogue, granted, but somehow I often find myself wanting to play other roguelikes, such as Drakefire Chasm or Doom the Roguelike, because they have such a nice setting that draws me in, while here everything is maybe, yeah, not sure if soulless is the right word, maybe anonymous, but in any case, that's my biggest con for this game. Brogue is available for free, and I've put a link in the description. The game is definitely not a coffee break roguelike though, unless you die early, which will happen at first, so plenty of coffee breaks where you can actually play it and die. But it's also not too long, probably 2 to 5 hours to beat. So these were my 5 games for newcomers to the genre of roguelikes. Of course, I cannot talk about all games and I haven't played all games, so please, if you have other ones, leave them in the description. I want to take out a couple though. There is, for example, Tangledeep, which is available on Steam, and apparently it's quite a good roguelike and also quite easy to get into, but I haven't played this one myself, so I can't comment on it. Furthermore, there's Sproggiwood, which is a game that I really like, I really enjoy it, but I didn't include it here just because I kind of wanted to stick to more traditional roguelikes. Sproggiwood has some persistency in its world, you can actually find things that then you can later use in other runs, so I didn't want to include it here just for kind of sake of consistency. Then there's a game called Dungeonmans, which is available on Steam, and this is a very easy to play roguelike. I'm personally not a big fan of the game, but it gets very positive reviews on Steam, so definitely check it out if you think it might interest you. And then there are other roguelikes, such as The Ground Gives Way, which is available for free, but I actually haven't really played this one, so I can't really comment on it. The same with Infra Arcana, which is a very, I guess, Cthulhu-esque horror roguelike, which is supposed to be very good, but again, I haven't played it, so I can't comment on it. That said, I'll still leave a link to them in the description, so you can check them out if you would like to. And with that, I hope you found this video useful, and see you next time.